So we're hearing more and more stories about a specific crime, carjacking. What's up with this? I mean, every time you turn around, there's just something crazy going on. At least that's the way it seems here in Seattle. Maybe in your town, maybe not so much. Maybe you're just seeing it on the news. But it's gotten so bad that, here's the headline, and this is a Fox headline. Carjackings in cities like New York City and Philadelphia jump over 200%, often with kids behind the wheel, officials say. And so as a result, law enforcement officials and crime experts, they are taking carjacking concerns to Capitol Hill. All right, so we know there's a whole bunch of carjackings going on. What are we going to do about it? Well, some of the things that have been happening here in Portland and in Seattle, and I'm going to show some video of that. I'm going to talk about that. You've got people kind of pressing back. They are saying, yeah, you're not going to steal my car. You've got a Lyft driver who literally jumps through the window. He's hanging out of the window like Dukes of Hazzard style as this carjacker is driving through the streets of Seattle. We've got another one in Portland where a carjacker stole a car with a 3-year-old out of somebody's driveway. They're warming up the car. And concerned citizen, the husband, you're going to have to stay tuned because, I mean, these are just crazy storylines. So that's what we're covering today. We're covering carjackings because it's so wildly out of control. And it's just not reasonable. Before we jump on in, if you're new here, welcome. My name is Sean Reynolds. I own a couple of real estate companies here in Seattle, Washington. And why wouldn't I read news for reasonable people? This stuff isn't reasonable. It's wildly unreasonable. It's what we're doing. All right. So we know that the carjacking issue has gotten bad enough where people are like, oh, geez, we really need to do something here. Let's go talk about it on Capitol Hill. You know, when it's getting to that level, people are like, yeah, we can't really ignore this. It's just gotten so wildly out of control. And Seattle and Portland, yeah, you do hear stories like this, but it's not on the daily like in some other cities. It's some wild stuff. Carjackings have skyrocketed 200% or more in multiple big cities across the country in past years, as law enforcement officials and crime experts pleaded with lawmakers on Tuesday for help addressing the rampant issue, with one official warning, anyone in a car is a potential victim. Like the 3-year-old sitting in the back seat, getting ready to go to daycare or whatever it is. Somebody, the car's running, it's in somebody's driveway. Somebody jumps in, takes off. That's nuts. Law enforcement executives and officials from crime monitoring agencies from across the country convened on Capitol Hill on Tuesday morning to testify before the Senate Judiciary Committee. This is how bad it's gotten, for a hearing to address the startling trends related to carjackings. So, you know what we need to do? We need to up the ante on carjacking. We need to up the ante on all crimes. Just start putting people in jail. You got to do something. You got to do something. And this whole, it's their first time. Whatever. It's their 36th offense. They're going to be better next time. And what we're seeing a real pattern on is young kids being used. And let's be honest. I think a lot of times it's gang members and they're doing initiations, or they know that if these young kids get caught driving a car, carjacking a car, because they're under 18, hall pass, juvenile delinquent. They go through a different system. So I think you've got to have some pretty major changes to how we handle some of these crimes. And because folks know right now they can just basically get away with whatever, and it's just not going to change much. All right. So let's check out witnesses. This is down in Portland. Witnesses catch man who stole car with 3-year-old inside. All right. So let's read this story. It's kind of a wild one. Police say a suspect who allegedly stole a car. I love that. Okay, but he was in the car. We've got video of him stealing the car. And, you got the Lyft driver hanging out. But allegedly, this is on the other story, allegedly the car thief. Yeah, you have to say that. But still, yeah, it's police say a suspect who stole a car. I'm going to edit it. Who stole a car with a 3-year-old boy inside was arrested after he was chased down and detained by several witnesses. The incident started a little after 8 a.m. on a Friday morning in Northeast Portland, Oregon, on Northeast 16th Avenue near Shaver Street, where the suspect allegedly jumped into a mother's running car and drove off with her 3-year-old son still inside. The boy's father, who was also there, jumped in his own car and chased the suspect for about a mile. Police say he crashed into the allegedly stolen car near Northeast Multnomah Street and 21st Avenue. T.P. Brown Jr. saw the whole thing unfold. Okay, so you've got mom who left the 3-year-old in the car, watching her car go off with her kid in it. Dad jumps in the other family car and books it after his car, which has been jacked with his 3-year-old inside. Then he crashes into that car. I mean, this is literally Hollywood style, right? Because people are just taking things into their own hands and they're like, yeah, if that car gets away, odds of me finding it with my kid, I mean, horrible. So the guy just literally crashes. So he crashes his one car into his other car to get it to stop. This is a witness. I hear a Prius screaming down the side of me, he said. It had the lights flashing, honking the horn, almost as if a cop would do when he's trying to get through an intersection. This is the dad trying to catch up with the other family car with the 3-year-old inside of it. The Prius used his car in almost a pit maneuver. At that point, the gentleman dropped out of the car, jumped into the other car, and began to tussle with the driver. So the dad smashes into his other car with the alleged thief in it and his kid in the back seat, starts pummeling with the driver. Police say the thief began to run, and that's when Brown chased him down in his Dodge Charger. This is another concerned citizen. This is somebody in the community that's like, what is going on? Oh, yeah, okay. So gets in his Dodge Charger. I love that it's a Dodge Charger. Why wouldn't it be? I saw him crossing the street, Brown said. I knew this was a dead end. The only option was to climb the fence or go through the fence. I immediately floored it, pinned him against the fence. I asked him not to move until the police came here. At that point, he wanted to continue to climb the fence. I stepped out of my vehicle, grabbed him off the fence, and detained him until police got here. That's insane. Talked about this yesterday. You're going to see more and more instances of people kind of allegedly taking matters into their own hands. Vigilante style. I wouldn't necessarily call this vigilante style, but the police definitely wouldn't recommend this type of intervention where you crash your car, tussle with somebody, and then another concerned citizen drives his car, pins the alleged car thief against a fence. I mean, this is all just, you couldn't write this stuff, right? And have it unfold in front of you like that. Other witnesses nearby helped hold down the suspect until police got to the scene and arrested him. Good. I am glad this guy got arrested. It's probably not going to do much. It's Portland. They're going to let him go. I don't know. Does kidnapping a 3-year-old, does that count for much in Portland? I don't know. It's got to, right? I mean, it's got to. Police identified the suspect as 40-year-old Justin E. Hill. He was booked on several charges, including second-degree kidnapping. He did go to the hospital, and then he got out of the hospital and he got booked. The 3-year-old boy was not hurt during the incident. It's just nutty. So here you can take a picture. Here you can take, for those of you on the audio, what we're now looking at is the Portland Police Bureau. We're looking at a white Dodge Charger. I think is it a 2-door? I think it's a 2-door, up against kind of a pretty tall fence, cyclone fence. And it looks like it was maybe a gate to a driveway or something. So the car literally pinned this guy up against the fence, but he could probably, the alleged thief could probably work his way out. And that's when the driver of the Charger got out and basically held him. And then some other people just came along, other concerned citizens came along and held him until the cops got there. So you can see it looks like a normal residential kind of area. I mean, you just got a cyclone fence, not a super tall one, but tall enough for this Charger to pin this guy against a fence. I mean, just some nutty stuff going on, right? Here's the other one, and this one just happened last night. The title of this one is Out of a Movie, One Arrested After Carjacking in Downtown Seattle. Okay, we're going to play a little bit of a clip. This is from, I think, King 5.
It was kind of just like out of a movie, honestly.
The driver and passenger of this carjacked Lyft walked away uninjured, but it's clear they were shaken.
The Lyft driver put my suitcase in the back of the car, and then someone stole the car. The Lyft driver jumped into the car through the through the passenger window, and then they just took off.
I just dove in when I saw the guy jump in the front seat, and I dove in the car. So I thought it would stop right away, but he just overpowered me and kept saying he's not going to jail. He's not going back to jail.
I think the guy is going to jail. Hopefully he's going to jail. People said that they saw this Lyft driver's legs dangling out of the door because he had literally hopped in the door to try and stop this thief from taking his car. And just literally out of a movie.
A chase that ended on Capitol Hill but started downtown. There, Seattle police were already responding to a call of a stabbing near 4th and Pike.
Oh, okay. So the police were in the area because we had a little stabberoo on 4th and Pike. 4th and 3rd and Pike, that's the majority of our crime stories are coming out of these areas. And all of our politicians are just like, what do we do here? It's pretty rough. Jonathan Cho from 𝐏𝐞𝐚𝐬𝐬 recently got harassed there. I mean, it's just, you got some real crazy stuff going on.
When officers say they saw a struggle and proceeded to chase the stolen Lyft for several blocks. The Lyft ultimately crashed into the side of the Starbucks Reserve Roastery on Capitol Hill.
I've been here 3.5 years and have not seen anything like this.
Back where the chase first happened, near 2nd and Pike, and business owners say the area is just not safe. Hasn't been for some time. All the plywood speaks volumes too.
Public safety doesn't exist.
This is the area of Seattle that we keep talking about, and this owner just basically said public safety does not exist. So if you're a community leader, if you're a business leader, if you're a mayor, you need to figure out what to do with these areas, and you need to clear them out. And until you get some more police, until you put some more police on this, I mean, this is just going to keep on going. You're going to have more incidences like this. It's going to get worse. It's not going to get better.
In downtown Seattle.
Leela Ferenj owns Gyro's Place on 4th and is among a growing, vocal group of business owners who are speaking out, saying enough.
I pay rent. I pay my workers. I have to buy everything. And nobody wants to come downtown because it's not safe.
Tonight, both the man who was stabbed on 4th and Pike and the Lyft driver who was hijacked are alive. An outcome that could have been so much different.
I'm upset. I'm very upset.
So this is just happening on the regular. These are news stories. These are not unique news stories. And this news story is markedly, the outcome is markedly better than a lot of them, where people end up losing their lives. And yet we're kind of like, I mean, it's a big city crime. It happens. How else do we spin this? I mean, that's what I literally feel like is going on in Seattle and Portland. Because, what are you going to do? You can start actually arresting people and locking them up? That seems drastic. Does that seem reasonable? It's nutty, right? So let's take a look and see how this story actually went down, because we need to get into the details here just a little bit, kind of understand the full concept. Full context. The Seattle Police Department initially reported that the stabbing and the crash were connected, although police later said they weren't. Bad information? Fake news? Unsure. The carjacking incident began with a Lyft pickup. The driver was helping the passenger put his luggage in the back of the car when he said someone jumped into the driver's seat and tried to drive off. The Lyft driver said he got into the car to try and wrestle back control with his legs dangling out the passenger side window. Seattle police were responding to the stabbing when they saw the carjacking occur. Believing the men they saw got into the car were involved in the stabbing, officers began chasing the car. As they chased the vehicle, officers could see the driver and passenger fighting. The vehicle crashed into the Starbucks Reserve Roastery near Minor Avenue and Pike Street. And the driver of the Lyft car, he did do an interview with, I think it was King. He did not do one with 𝐏𝐞𝐚𝐬. And he basically said, yeah, this guy just kept saying, I don't want to go back to jail. I don't want to go back to jail. Well, son, that is unfortunately apparently where you are headed, allegedly. While interviewing the two, officers learned the passenger was the owner of the car. The vehicle's owner explained he is a rideshare driver and he was picking up a customer when the suspect jumped into the driver's seat and drove off. Police arrested the 35-year-old suspect. He was taken to the hospital for minor injuries, pummeling that he received at the hands of the Lyft driver, hopefully, and he will be booked into King County Jail for robbery, according to police. This stuff is nuts. I mean, it's nuts that this is happening, that people feel comfortable doing this in broad daylight. I mean, in the morning on a Friday, everybody's like, thank God we made it to Friday in Portland. Dude, we made it to Friday. Then you had somebody take your car with your kid in it. I mean, this is not a new story. I mean, this story was, but this is not a new theme. I mean, it's every parent's nightmare, right? But you have that on top of, people basically knowing that this storyline is so out of control that they're actually having a congressional hearing on it in Capitol Hill. All right, what do we possibly do about the carjacking scenario? It's not getting any better. Well, you need to put some, needs to be repercussions for these folks thinking that they can do this and just get away with it. I don't want to go back to jail. Well, no, I think you do need to go back to jail. You may not want to go back to jail, but we need your rear end off the streets. I mean, that's what we need to do with a lot of these folks. But instead, we're just dumping everybody onto the streets because of COVID and because it's, all this other stuff where, we don't want people in jail. That's not a place for somebody to be. Let them roam around on the streets and see what happens. Carjackings happen. That's what happens when criminals get out and, you've just got this going on. There's some wild video on the internet of carjackings. I watched one in, I think Philadelphia, and just mind blowing. You put yourself in the position of, what if I was involved in that? What would I do? I mean, it would just be, I've talked a little bit about my, recent crime experience at Home Depot here in Bellevue. And, I'm walking into Home Depot and there's a guy, trying to steal a full shopping cart full of Home Depot goods that, they're crimes of need because his kitchen needed painting, apparently, because he was stealing paint. No, these guys are taking this stuff and they are selling it, and they can sell it on the internet. They can go downtown Seattle and just post up on the sidewalk right where we're talking about here, 4th and Pike. That is literally exactly where all this stuff is going on. So why wouldn't a carjacking happen? You know what I mean? Let's be reasonable. This stuff is going to continue happening and it's going to continue going on. And let's be honest, I'll have podcasts for days on this stuff because we're not really doing anything to try and prevent that from happening. Now, here in Seattle, our mayor has said, well, we're going to have some changes. Okay. And those changes so far have meant kind of analyzing where we sit. But I am hopeful. I'm always that, glass half full, that he's going to have an impact, and we're just going to have to see what that looks like. But you got to start arresting people. All right. Yep. Need more capacity police officers to do that. And then the prosecutors on the other end, they've got to step up. And that's where right now in Seattle and in Portland, that's just not happening. So, there's that. And so until we take a hard stance against some of these crimes, it's just going to keep on going on. I mean, why wouldn't it? Why wouldn't it? It's just, this stuff just gets worse and worse. It doesn't just unravel itself. It's not a reasonable position to think, well, it goes in waves, polls go up, polls go down. No, it's just going to get worse. And I think most reasonable people understand that, and they'll do two things. They'll tune into a podcast like this that actually, it takes a hard look at some of the questions that we need to ask. Hey, how do we make this get better? Or they just ignore it. You know what? I'm just going to watch my favorite soap opera. Yeah. I mean, literally. I'm guilty of that too. I read so much negative stuff. It's stuff that's hard to, somebody driving off with a 3-year-old in the backseat. That's just not reasonable. So yeah, we've got all these conflicting things going on. And I think the vast majority of people, they just kind of, we know that crime is going up. We know that crime's, increased just a scooch, but we're going to blame that on the coronavirus. Well, guess what? After the coronavirus, I mean, once we're endemic, not pandemic, And we got to be getting close, because guess what? Here in the state of Washington, our mask mandate, we're still wearing effing masks in the gym. That's so annoying. It's so annoying. It's so annoying. On March 12th, on March 11th at 11:59 p.m., mask on. March 12th, 12 a.m., mask off. It's going to be a new day. It's going to be a new revolution is coming. We're not wearing masks anymore. So no, literally we're doing that. And that, our governor and we've got, maybe wherever you live, you're not living with a mask mandate. You're probably not, because state of Washington is one of the very last, along with, I think, Hawaii. And Hawaii is even lifting all of their pandemic travel restrictions. So here in the state of Washington, we just got rid of the vaccine mandate for indoor stuff, going to a restaurant, going to a gym. And now we've got the mask mandates coming off. March 1st, the vaccine mandates came off. And so we're finally, here in the state of Washington, we're finally getting rid of some of this stuff. So we're not going to have that to blame anymore for increases in violence, increase in home robberies, increase in catalytic converter thefts. That's a real thing now. We've got a multi-agency thing here in Seattle where I think 9 different agencies are getting together to try and figure out what they can do to do a little pushback on the whole catalytic converter theft thing. And it's just crime in general is skyrocketing. And the stories that we see, like these 2 that I just read here today, that, it's like back in the day, you didn't have these stories. You might have a story from like New York or something, but I remember waking up as a kid, and maybe it's just the control of the media. Let's just give them good stories. But no, if it bleeds, it leads, right? I mean, if there's a really bad story to be had, they're going to roll it. Right now, we've got so many bad stories that I can, cherry pick these all day long, and they're crazy. It feels like when I was a kid, the big story was Mrs. Johnson's rose garden was recently ravished by a deer. She lost her prize rose garden collection to some ravenous deer coming out of the mountains. I mean, that was the big story. And now you've got, you got stabbings. You got a stabbing along with the carjacking in the middle of a big city. It's just what we're doing. You've got concerned citizens, taking their own cars and pinning people, and husbands chasing down their other car with their kid in the back seat. That's some wild stuff. It's flat not reasonable. And we're going to keep talking about it because I think people need to know this is what's going on out there. And this is the kind of stuff that, that needs to be covered, that, mainstream media gets a little bit of it right, but then, start talking about, okay, all right, we know this is out of control. What are we going to do? And that's where the pressure needs to come. So, and a lot of that has to do with the politicians in place and their policies and the, district attorneys that are in place, and just a general consensus of people, reasonable citizens demanding, hey, this stuff shouldn't be going on. We shouldn't be forced to vigilante style protecting ourselves. Yeah, I had to jump in my Lyft car in the passenger seat, through the passenger window. What was the passenger window, being down? What, the whole thing is just, what? How does this work? Yeah, it's wild, right? So that's what's going on. That's what's going on here in Seattle and across the United States, New York City and Philadelphia. Carjackings way up, whether they're part of an initiation ride into a gang or just general violence, and people stealing stuff and joyriding, whatever. People need to know, hey, this stuff is going on, and it's not headed in the right direction. It's not reasonable to believe this stuff is just going to go away. So that's why I'm covering these topics. And I think people, they want to know and they need to know, and that's what we're doing. All right. Thanks so much for being here. Thanks so much for supporting the News for Reasonable People podcast. I'll catch up with you soon. Talk then. Bye for now.